What is up, everybody? Mr. Curtis here. Welcome to 5.6 Society and Industrial Revolution. Like I told you in the last one, we're really going to focus on effects for these last couple of videos. And the last one was on technology effects or technological effects. This one is on social effects from the Industrial Revolution. Remember, we're creating this whole new factory system. We're shifting people from farms into cities, into urban areas, working in factories. And the question becomes, what impact does that have on industrialized society? So we're doing 1750 to 1900. Let's rock and roll on this. Let's just get through some of this stuff today. First major change. We're going to see a huge reshifting and restructuring of social classes in Europe that are industrialized. We have this whole new group of people, this new social class of factory owners, and they essentially become the new rich. And they are just going to get a ton of money. They invest in these factories early. They build more factories, and therefore they have a lot of money. If you know anything about U.S. history and you had a good 8th grade, let's say, U.S. history teacher, you might know some of these people as the Carnegies or the Rockefellers. And those people who developed this heavy industry in the United States are similar to these initial factory owners in Britain who just gain a ton of wealth. And they're going to really compete with these old rich nobles. These people have had power since feudalism and whose familial ties go back hundreds of years. And this new rich is going to kind of be in competition with this old rich. And we're going to see that play out in some ways in the Enlightenment ideas that are going to come out and some of these revolutions that happened that we talked about earlier in this unit. That's going on again at the same time. But we're really going to see the new rich versus the old rich. The other thing we're going to see is this new group of people called the middle class, and they're often called white-collar workers in modern society. There's blue-collar workers who are kind of people who work with their hands, work in industry. That's blue-collar, and then there's white-collar, people who kind of wear shirt and ties to work every day, as I kind of am wearing today, although I have a blue and white, whatever, not important. But in this case, we're talking about the middle class. These are the factory managers. These are like entrepreneurs, people who are creating stuff, people who are investing in stuff, but not these like owners of everything. They're the people who are kind of maybe invested a little bit of money, a little bit of capital or money into factories. Also, we have this middle class is going to have a lot of money, and they're wealthy. Like they're wealthy. This middle class people are wealthy, and they are making, as a result of this money that they have a lot of free time on their hands. They're not working 60 hours a week like we'll get to in a second, like the working class. They have a lot of what's called leisure time to just hang out. So we're going to see the development in a lot of urban areas by 1800s and the growth of theaters, plays, operas. We're going to see the growth of sports and popular sports. So originally, most of the popular sports were, for example, horse racing or boxing. And then eventually by the 1900s, we're going to see the growth, and especially early 1900s, we're going to see the growth of, in the United States, stuff like baseball. College football is going to become big. And people have time to just go see these things. We're also going to see the growth of museums, where a lot of these wealthy people are going to put their money into the arts, and we want to have art museums and museums of history where we can go and look at stuff and, you know, reflect with our leisure time on the great things that are going on in the world. Also, the children of these middle class people are going to be able to attend schools. There are private schools until the mid-18 to late 1800s. There's no public schools yet where everyone gets to go. The only people who can attend school are people who have the money to pay for it, and that's mainly the middle class and upper class people. And then those people are also going to be able to eventually go to college. That's the middle class. The working class people is another new social class. They are really the factory employees. They have horrendously difficult and tough lives. We're talking 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. work days when the Industrial Revolution starts. And we're talking 6 days per week. We're talking, do the math. That's 15-hour days, 6 days per week. You get an hour and a half break, half hour for usually lunch, and then an hour for dinner for a break. There's no safety standards. There's stories of women getting their hair pulled into machinery and then not, because there's no emergency button on there that you'd imagine today. Their whole hair and head gets pulled into the machine, and stories of bones cracking and blood dripping down on the floors. Really horrendous conditions. No ventilation, no emergency exits, people locking in factory workers from the outside so they can't sneak out during the day when no one's looking and then come back later to collect their paycheck. So if you hurt yourself on the job, there's no workers' comp. You can't sue your employer. Like, none of that exists. So like, you're on a sewing machine, you're working hour 14 of the day, sewing machine needle goes doo, 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 all through your finger. You're bleeding everywhere. You just broke all your bones. The factory manager, the floor manager will come over and say, can you keep working? And if you say no, you're fired. And there's someone else outside waiting to take your job. There's almost no time to do anything else except for church. Church is on Sunday. There's no work that day, so you are expected to go to church that day. And we are going to see eventually children working in these factories because they can be paid less. And if you pay someone less to do the job, that's more profit for the factory owners and the managers and the people who invest in these businesses. Also, eventually, we're going to have children working in these factory mines as well. So really, we're going to see the growth of this child labor as well. Women in this period, the middle-class women, the people who come back here, that's this group of people who are the factories, managers, and entrepreneurs. The men are going off and overseeing the factories or investing or doing what they need to do. The middle-class women have a lot more time than women did in the past. They're not sitting at home making shirts anymore because they're just buying them from the factories that are producing them. And also, there's a whole bunch of new inventions that are going to make their lives easier. We see things that are invented, for example, like early development of washing machines and stoves and things that just make things easier. So these women have a lot more time on their hands, so they have a lot more time to talk about things and push for things. And we see these women's groups of middle-class women start to organize with their free time to try and change the ills of society. Things like pushing for abolishing slavery or banning alcohol or pushing for women's suffrage, which more on that later. But these women are going to start forming groups to push for this stuff. Working class women are not going to have these benefits. They are not reaping the benefits of industrialization. These middle class women are really going to ignore these working class women. They look down on these working class women. They see them as uneducated people who don't understand the ills of society. And this would be the middle class woman over here, or women, along with some men, and this would be the working class women. These people are going to, eventually women are going to replace men in the factories, and then children as well. So they're going to be working hard lives and a little more difficult. We are going to see a lot of people move into urban areas. This is called urbanization. Urban just means city. We're going to see an increase of pollution, overcrowded housing, lack of sanitation, crime. We talked about this in class already, so I don't want to highlight this too much. But all of this shows the growth in the city based on the green colors. And we're seeing the increase of these cities in industrialized places. When with the lack of sanitation and the lack of housing, we have people cramped together in these tiny spaces. Also, the pollution from these factories, increasing crime, alcoholism, some just not so ideal stuff. And probably a vision that if you don't live in an urban area that you might have of some working class areas in urban areas. And last is that we have this increase in what's called standard of living. We all have standards. You might have a standard if you want to be in a relationship with somebody. That standard of what you have. Some of you have no standards, but if you do have standards, you're like, I'm not going to date this person unless X, Y, and Z. In this case, we're talking a standard of living. What people expect and what their standards are for overall life in industrialized countries. Today in the United States, most people expect to have things like running water, clean water, toilet, oven, stove, electricity, all those things. That's our standard. And what we see from 1750 to 1900 is an increase in the standard of living. We see better medicine, household items. We see the telephone invented, toilet paper. We have toilets invented, perfected in Europe by a man by the name, I believe, John Crapper was his name. Another story for another day. And then we also have the washing machine, ovens, and stoves. These become standards that everyone just expects to have, and that's better for people because the standard of living as a result of industrialization is going up. So we have all these horrible things going on for working class people, but we do have an increase in the standard of living, although you're dealing with pollution and crime and alcoholism and unsanitary conditions. But we got all these new products and consumer goods. So that's a quick overview of this and the societal impacts of the Industrial Revolution. 9 minutes, 30 seconds. Not horrible. As always, you got any questions, write it down. Let me know. You know what I'm going to say.